So when you have the spring over here and it's just sitting there, and then we hang the mass from it, it's going to stretch out. And we've already studied that stretching, and we came up with this model for the stretch and the force that the spring must be applying to the mass because it's in equilibrium. Now, because it's in equilibrium, if you draw that free body diagram, you have the force that the spring is exerting on the mass, and then you have the gravitational force. If it's in equilibrium, these two vectors are the same length, the same magnitudes, they're just opposite directions. So then we get that the net force on them is 0. Now, that means that our spring force, the magnitude of our spring force, would be equal to the weight. And I put a absolute value sign around there because the typical equation, if you look on an equation sheet or in a textbook, you'll see that negative kx, but it's just because sometimes we use delta x, and sometimes delta x is negative if you want to do that. But the force was positive. Anyway, so then this would equal mg. And so we could find the spring constant by dividing mg by the delta x. And I wanted to take the absolute value because I don't want a negative spring constant. That's not the point, okay? You want to put an absolute value sign around here. I'll take care of it. Okay? So, if we then take this spring mass system and we disturb it, that's the fancy word, you're going to disturb the system, what would it do? If you took your finger and maybe like pulled it, pushed it down just a little bit, some distance that was less than delta x. So while it's sitting here, you just give it a little push down and then you let it go. What's it going to do? Oh, it's going to oscillate. Okay. So my question is then, what affects the oscillation, the period, of the mass spring system? Is it the mass? Is it the displacement? Is it the spring itself? So what I want you to do with your box of goodies is to answer my challenge. Determine what, usually you spell what with an H, what variables affect the period of the spring mass system.